How's it going, everybody? Want to give everybody a update as to where I am with the Service Provider stuff. Service Provider has been going actually um, slow to a degree, but at the same point in time, it's been productive and there's forward progress, things like that. But I wanted to give everybody a kind of a little bit of an update slash some of the stuff that I've been running into regarding training wise and what I've gotten done, where I'm at with stuff. Let's go from there. So basically, what has been going on lately is there's a lot of material on the Service Provider track, and quite frankly, it's when you start digging into a course, whether you're teaching it or learning it for the first time, or there's you're familiar with a good portion of the topics on the blueprint, there are some things that you're probably not going to be as familiar with, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. So, like for instance, there are topics that are on the um, pretty much all four exams, and that's the route, advanced route, core, and edge courses. And I'm not in any big hurry to plow through them. What I'm more interested in doing is learning how the technologies work and then taking really detailed notes on how they operate and then integrating those into some sort of slide work that I'll be able to pass on to all of you and go from there. Now, with that being said, I would say probably bust out my pen pad here real quick. There's actually a funny thing. Somebody left me a comment a little while ago on YouTube, and it was quit using a mouse to write with. Well, I don't use a mouse. I use here's my pen. I do actually have I have a pen pad, which is how I draw on there. I don't use a mouse, but funny thing, my computer hasn't been rebooted in like 2.5 weeks, so and I got a lot open, so a lot of the time it's just it's slow. It just needs to be rebooted. So just wanted to throw that out there for the person that did comment. I just wanted to say, okay, I'm not using a mouse. I used to back when I didn't make as much money. So you have the route exam, you have the advanced route, and I'm going to go over these and kind of give everybody my 2 cents on where stuff is at and what you should be focusing on. There's core, and then you have edge down here. Now, I've already pretty much done route. Route is pretty much done. There's, so I've covered OSPF. I've covered IS of BGP. I'm going to do a bit more on IPv6 and more like the fundamentals to it. And then I need to do a redistribution section, and that will pretty much finish that up for the route exam. We're sitting in around what do I have? Around 25 hours or so. It's probably going to be closer to 30 by the time I'm done with it. That's a rough estimate. I have to double check on that because, like I said, I have to add some more for IPv6. I have more theory, breaking down the protocol, stuff like that, and then I have to do some videos on redistribution because as we progress into the later exams and the later courses, we're going to be spending a lot of time doing redistribution. And for those of you that are familiar with the topology, this is the INE Carrier Supporting Carrier Service Provider version 3 topology. Now this is well publicized and on the internet, so I downloaded, I have the All Access Pass, so that's what I've been going through this weekend. This entire weekend has been inter-ASVPN, and it's not first time a lot of this stuff has ever worked for me, so I'm learning it as I go. That's why these 4 courses are coming out really slowly right now. That's because there's a lot of stuff I'm a firm believer in I want to know the material before I teach it and stuff like that. So that's what I'm doing a lot of right now. Now, advanced route, there's basically the way that these guys work out here is where you leave off in BGP with route, you pick up an advanced route right away. So there's a lot of like moving from a small branch office to a larger, more corporate office where you've got multiple connections, maybe a main office, something like that, corporate headquarters, things like that. And then you get into multiple connections to multiple upstream providers. And how would you do that versus how would you do that in regards to like we're going to have a situation where you're going to have multiple providers. You're going to have instead of a static IP and you're going back and forth, you're doing dynamic DHCP, or you have a large block of addresses, stuff like that. So we're going to be doing more advanced BGP here. I say BGP again, but this is going to be like a caveat for like route reflection, confederation, things like that. We're going to be dealing a lot with that. A lot of the heavier duty stuff. Deeper dive into some other aspects of it. And then from there, we pretty much dive into multicast. Now, multicast is kind of a scary topic for a lot of people, and I want to take just a moment to explain kind of what we're going to be looking at when it comes to that. Because multicast really isn't that super complicated, and as long as you have a general understanding of how it works. So I'm not here to explain multicast in its, how it works and stuff like that here right now, but if you understand how enterprise multicast works, so like for instance, you've got PIM, and you've got two different deployment modes. You have dense mode, which is a push, and then you got sparse mode, which is a pull. What I mean by pull and push, this is the model used to deploy the multicast traffic. Where dense mode, it just sends the traffic all the time. You don't care whether or not you just push it. You don't care whether the receiver wants it or not. A pull model is a little bit more interactive, where you care whether the receiver wants it or not, because the receiver actually signals you when they do want the multicast traffic. So we'll talk about PIM sparse mode, and we'll talk about the RP, and then the shortest path tree versus the source-based tree, and things like that, and how those work, and then how you go to you have the shortest path tree, you have the shared tree when you've got multiple receivers asking for multicast feeds, and how that comes into play. Multicast is going to be fairly involved, but the way that the blueprint reads for advanced route, they don't go into dealing with, say for instance, router 10 over here wants to be able to talk to our router 8 over here via multicast. That would fall more into the edge course, because of the fact that you're dealing with a customer router to a customer router, where that's pretty much where edge falls into play. So we'll be talking about these technologies. We'll get the core ready to work when we're setting up multicast. We'll get that to a position where that'll be ready to go. And we'll talk about like the MDT, which is the multicast distribution tree, and how the point to multi-point GRE tunnels come into play with that, and how that comes into play, why that would be significant information for you to know, things like that. That's pretty much advanced route for the core infrastructure. Then you get into things like IPv6 tunneling and DHCP and NAT. So these are more advanced topics. We'll be taking a look at those in a lot of detail and how they come into play. And so I haven't gotten into that area yet. I'm still working on the edge aspects of it. I'm focusing on I'm actually following the SPv3 course layout right now. So I just got wrapped up inter-AS-VPN a little while ago, and I'm really happy to know that I have 2 SPv4 CCIEs that I can reach out to and say, hey, I don't get this. Hey, this is not working. What am I missing? Because you'll find, and I'm learning this now, that there's a lot of little things about MPLS, especially when you start scaling it with inter-AS-VPN, carrier supporting carrier, dealing with traffic engineering, which we haven't even touched on yet. There's a lot of things that you really need to know about the protocol before you can really get into the meat and potatoes of it. So I kid you not, and the reason why I'm letting everybody know this is I want to give everybody some realistic expectations for when it comes to working with this stuff, because there's a what do you call it? There is a it's one thing to already know the material and then you just start talking about it in a video or put some slides together. For routing and switching, I can pretty much do that off the top of my head. I might have to sit there and like before I would start a video, I would spend a few minutes to, okay, let's think about QoS. Let's talk about multicast. Let's talk about IPv6. And let's think about it for a few minutes. I might review some notes before I kick the video off, just so that at least I'm working off of some detailed information that I can then, maybe there's something I forgot or I was going to overlook and didn't realize it, and throw that into the video. So that's what I'm doing right now, is going through that material. And I can tell you there's something you don't realize how deep a topic can go until you've got a CCIE that is giving you guidance on something and he's pointing you in the right direction, saying, okay, hey, because I spent about 4 hours trying to get carrier supporting carrier up and running, and I was running into problems all over the place. Like, because I was migrating it from inter-AS option C to carrier supporting carrier. So I was turning stuff off, turning stuff back on, migrating this. A lot of that stuff I'm okay with because of the fact that I already knew the environment, I knew the deployment, I was good to go. But at the same point in time, there were other things where I was like, man, I don't know what's going on here. There's a lot of little silly things that I was overlooking, but it's one of those things where it's a simple mistake that you're simply overlooking, and I didn't realize it. And like redistributing the wrong ISIS process number, or you didn't turn on label allocation on iOS XR towards R6. So silly things, simple things, small things, but they're the little things that will break your end-to-end connectivity. Like for instance, I was advertising routes from R9 to R12 and vice versa. Well, control plane wise, the routes were showing up. I'm like, sweet. I got all happy. I'm like, all right, finally, this is starting to work. And then I go to ping and nothing. I'm like, well, what the heck? So then you're going through, step-by-step verification of every router in that transit path until I found out what the problem was. I overlooked the configuration option, so I turned that on, and then I was able to reach, but then I lost reachability for something else, and then I turned this feature on, not knowing that I needed it on for something else. I turned that feature off, this feature on. There are things that you're going to run into that are going to be like that, and I'm trying to go through those growing pains ahead of you, so that by the time I'm doing the video here in another however long it takes, 6 months from now, who knows, that by the time that happens, I'm pointing out what to look out for, because every little hiccup or issue that I run into, I'm documenting all these, and I'll throw them as like little caveats in here. Hey, be careful of this because I ran into that, something like this. Now, that is how this stuff comes into play. And advanced route's a fairly involved course as well. I don't know how long that one's going to take me. I'm assuming that each one of these courses is going to take me around 30 hours to do. Around that. It could be a little less, could be a little more, depending on how far we go. Now, core is a lot of the same stuff as well. You're going to start off with, MPLS. There's actually a little bit of training that a friend of mine sent me that he works for Cisco, and he wanted to let me know that there's some things that I was overlooking and didn't even realize it, like how service providers moved into MPLS from, the 80s and early 90s until, early 2000s when MPLS started getting deployed, because he's been with Cisco for like 25 years. And I was like, oh, okay. So it was good I wouldn't call it insider information, but it was more the history, the backstory. So We'll talk about MPLS as a protocol, and then we'll get into LDP and how that works, and then we'll start talking about MPLS traffic engineering and how that comes into play. And then once we have TE out of the way, which basically is going to allow you to selectively determine how you move traffic from a particular customer inbound traffic, like say for instance, let's say R4 had a connection to R13 and R2 had a connection to R1. You could, and then R1 had a connection to XR1 this way, and then R13 had a connection here. Let's say you had something like this set up where you had lots of path diversity. Well, you could start signaling you're going to take this path for something, and so on and so forth. Once you start getting into it, it becomes pretty simple to dictate how you want stuff to go. And then when we're in core, there's going to be a large section of QoS, quality of service. Now, if you've never dealt with that, it is typically speaking, when you deal with multicast in advanced route and QoS in core, you're dealing with more CCA level topics. And I call that out for routing and switching, because in CCNP route switch, you don't hit those. I really wish they would. I wish they would bring in a real simple, like static RP configuration of multicast just to get your feet wet. Dip your toes in the water, get you familiar with it, know what the terminology is, how does the traffic flow go through, stuff like that. Same thing with QoS. Just cover the basics of it. You don't need to go in there and be able to do heavy duty, remarking of traffic. Excuse me. More like, hey, this is what QoS is designed for, and then this is how you would modify it. This is how you would say, okay, traffic coming in here, and then we're going to mark it as XYZ, and then follow a path. I wish they would do that, but they don't. Cisco, that is. So QoS is going to be a big topic area. Again, I'm guessing somewhere in the neighborhood of about 30 hours. It could be way less than that. I'm thinking core will be, but I could be wrong yet. I won't know until I actually get there. Now, Edge in the blueprint is actually one of the smallest topic areas, but the amount of detail that we can go into with Edge is pretty daunting. So Edge, and I'm planning on doing that on purpose, because Edge is going to be kind of bringing everything that you learned in route, advanced route, and core kind of all together at the same time. So I'm planning on taking Edge, and Edge is going to be things like your doing your MPLS L3 VPN and your L2 VPN. It's things like that into play, and then it's not just that, but that's a lot of it. But it's going to be pretty much the bulk of that, and that's going to be connecting the customer to the provider, and the provider to the customer, etc. And then building the MPLS core out. Now, once we have this built out, my goal is to take it beyond that, because I think I'd be doing both myself and you all a disservice by leaving it as the blueprint has it read. Now, the reason I say that is because I would want to know this, because I have every intention of taking, once I'm done with the CCNP Service Provider courses, dropping it into 5th gear and going on for my for doing the CCA written. Now, I do have a plan. It's just a plan. That's more of a thought than anything else, to do a CCIE SPV4 written course. Now, the written course would be more high-level theory. It would be, going through, what is something? What is that? What is this? And really breaking it down on a per topic basis. So, like, for instance, talking about, layer 2 VPN with EVPN PBB and things like that. And what is that? How does that work? And then going through that, and that would be a way for you to bridge the gap. And then for every topic that we would do, so we'd have the theory, right? Because everybody needs to understand how stuff works, and then some labs to go along with it to kind of bring it all together. So not CCIE implementation labs, but more how do you reinforce what you've learned labs. So it's not going to be massive topology like you would potentially see in the CCA the CCA lab exam, but more just something that it's going to say, okay, well, we've talked about, let's say, MPLS L3 VPN. It'll be kind of like a redo of a lot of this stuff up here, but a different topology and nothing left off the table. So from the written perspective, we're going to be bridging that, and that's going to help everybody have a launching point into the lab. And I am planning on doing a course for CCA service provider, but that's going to be a long time in the making because a lot of it's going to be taking it to the next level and expert level deep dives and stuff like that. That's going to be a fairly involved course. So the thing here with all of these up here with Edge is I'll be taking, you know, the multiple service providers and bringing them together, and I'll be teaching all four of these courses, the stuff that's on the blueprint on one topology. And I'm still figuring out if this topology is going to work out or not. I've recorded a lot of route on it already, and a worst case scenario, if I have to, like for instance, when we get into, if I have to change it up, I will, and I'll let you guys know at the beginning of each video course how that would work out. So for right now, the topology that I've got for route has worked out quite well. But then again, it's kind of purpose built for that. Now there are things that where when we get into like Edge, where it'll make a lot of sense too, especially when we move from intra-AS L3 and L2 VPN to inter-AS L3 VPN, because there's really nothing on the blueprint that calls for L2 VPN that covers multiple providers. That's a little outside the scope, and I quite frankly haven't even covered it yet. So chances are we won't be hitting that because that's more of a CCIE topic. But we'll be definitely hitting stuff along those lines. But that's pretty much where I'm at. So I'm, like I said, I've got a few more videos to do for IPv6. I've got a few more videos to do for redistribution and stuff like that. And I'm going forward from there. And I'm having a lot of fun. It takes a long time to go through the material. And I'm a guy where I don't want to come off sounding like I don't know what I'm talking about, or I don't want to make it sound like this is the first time I've ever touched something. I want to, you know, be letting you all know ahead of time, okay, this is what you could see. Not to say that we couldn't go off on a tangent and put something in place, but I have my ways of doing things, and that kind of goes outside of how I would want to do that. But at the end of the day, what it really boils down to here is going through the material and trying to pass that information on to you guys. Now, I am using the raw images from ESXi, so currently I'm running 16 CSRs and 4 XRVs. And as you can see in this topology here, there's 15 iOS boxes and 2 XR boxes. So as I'm going through the Service Provider version 3 videos with INE, then I'm taking that information, and it's really helped me understand stuff. A lot of stuff, and I'm trying, and one of the goals that I have is once I've gone through it, that'll be a good launching point to go into CCNP and go from there. But you really need to understand what's going on, and that's one of the things that I'm planning on doing with Edge is incorporating things like QoS and Multicast and stuff like that in there, so you guys can see how that comes together, and not a super crazy difficult deployments, but more like, okay, we're going to be hitting this next and then going from there, and they'll be labeled uniquely for that. That'll be like, you know, like lab 1, or you know, like kind of like a putting it all together type of setup where we'll be, you know, like use case 1 and how you would do this, or I'll figure something out, but that's kind of how it's going to go. It's going to be built into Edge, and it'll be another 10 videos or whatever to try to put everything together and whatnot, because we'll cover the Edge course, and then we'll have the additional stuff on top of that. You know, once we've built it out, this is how it would go along and go from there. But it's pretty cool, I think, and how it'll all get put together. I'm really looking forward to it and whatnot. And then that's pretty much pretty much where it sits. After I'm done with service provider, it's all day security. The security version 5 lab, written in lab, comes out at the end of the year, and I know a lot of people that are studying for it. I am planning on tackling that as well, and going from there. And after that, I think it's going to be wireless. I think wireless is where I'm going to go next. I'm really liking what Jeff Rensink is doing, and so I'm planning on going that direction as well. We're going to see how this is going to play out and go from there. But I wanted to give everybody an update as to where I'm at with stuff. Like I said, I'm having a lot of fun. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, stuff like that. I have been receiving comments on, like, should I go CCNP or should I go CCIE? That's really up to you. I'm not going to try to sway a person one way or the other. If you think CCIE will benefit you, go for it. Just understand the commitment, and make sure you have your family on board and they understand what the type of sacrifice both you and they are going to be making in order for you to do it. And the other question I get a lot of, just to throw it in here at the tail end, is should I go up or should I scale up or should I scale out my learning? Again, that kind of goes back with the CCIE thing from CCNP. I've got a CCNP. Should I go after CCIE? If it makes sense, sure. To be honest with you now, I kind of wish I would have gone wider than deeper right away, but I'm kind of glad that it worked out the way that it did, because now I'm super strong in BGP and intra-AS VPN. So I know MPLS L3 VPN, what's inside of one service provider. So that stuff comes easy to me. It's the challenge of learning new technology that excites me, and that's why I'm digging in as gung-ho and going after it. But then again, you have to find something that works for you. But beyond that, you guys have been awesome. Thank you for all the support and continued subscribership. I'm going to try to start kicking out. I noticed I've been kind of lazy on some stuff, like getting videos out and stuff like that. So I'm trying to do like a once or twice a week type of video now, where I'll give like an update as to this, and I'm gonna try to start integrating a couple more CCNP switch exam videos in a week. I'm actually working on a couple other courses as well, so that's kind of where I'm at with that. I'm hoping I can start getting this stuff out. On a side note, I am trying to break up the monotony of always studying Cisco, and I am going for the Palo Alto. I've got a virtual machine. I'm going through some training material with them. I am going after the accredited certification engineer. It's I believe, don't quote me on this, I believe it's a free cert from them that you just have to take online. And after that's done, I'm planning on taking, I believe it's the Palo Alto Network Certified Security Engineer or Systems Engineer for 7. I'm planning on taking that as well. But that's going to be down the road a while. And then I'm planning on doing a course for that once it's done. I'd like to do F5 as well. F5s are coming at a premium now, so they're kind of expensive, as well as doing some riverbed training, because all that type of stuff is stuff that the company I work for now, we're deploying, and I want to be knowledgeable in that stuff when we're throwing it in our network to get it working. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Again, it takes time, guys. It takes time to go through the material and go from there. Until next time, thanks everybody for stopping by, and until next time, if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, throw them in the comments below. And until next time, you guys take it easy, be safe, and thanks for stopping by.